You ever wonder how your car radio can play music that's so crystal clear, but when you hear old-timey broadcasts, they're just filled with that crackle and hiss? Well, the answer is this really brilliant piece of engineering called frequency modulation. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into the amazing tech that finally, once and for all, silenced the static.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with that static problem that plagued early radio. And then we'll uncover the really elegant solution that just changed everything. We'll look at the different kinds of FM, understand the price you have to pay for that perfect sound, and then finally, see exactly why FM radio became the king of the airwaves.
All right, let's start with a sound we all recognize, even if it's been a while. You know that annoying static you get when a radio signal is weak? Well, that wasn't just some bug. It was actually a fundamental feature, or flaw, of the very first radio technology.
So why was it so scratchy? What was the deal? Well, the answer is all in the design of the original way we did radio, amplitude modulation, or as you know it, AM. It was a pretty simple and effective method, but it had one critical flaw. With AM, the idea is super simple. To encode a sound, you just make the radio wave taller or shorter. So a louder sound makes a taller wave. Simple, right? The problem is, stuff like lightning, bad wiring, or even your vacuum cleaner also create random spikes in height. An AM receiver has no way of telling the difference between the music it's supposed to play and all this electrical noise, so it just translates all of it into that static we all know and hate.
So for decades, the world was just stuck with static. That is, until an American engineer named Edwin Armstrong came along. See, back in the 1930s, he decided that instead of trying to fight the noise, he would invent a system that was just naturally immune to it.
To put it simply, with AM radio, the frequency, how fast the wave is wiggling up and down, it always stays exactly the same. All the information, the music, the voice, everything is packed into how high that wave gets.
But Armstrong's idea, frequency modulation, completely flipped this on its head. In FM, the wave's height stays perfectly constant. Instead, all the information is encoded by making the wave wiggle just a little bit faster or a little bit slower. A louder sound makes that frequency change more dramatically.
And that right there is the crucial difference. It's the simplest way to think about it. AM changes height while FM changes speed. This one little conceptual shift is what changed broadcasting forever.
And this is where you see the absolute genius of Armstrong's solution. Since all that electrical noise primarily messes with the wave's height, an FM receiver, which is only listening for changes in speed, can basically just ignore it. The static gets filtered out by the very design of the system. It's brilliant.
Okay, so now things get a little more nuanced. It turns out that FM isn't just one thing. Depending on what you're trying to do, you can actually adjust how much the frequency changes. And that gives us two main types, or you could say flavors, of FM.
The parameter that controls all this is called the modulation index. Honestly, the best way to think of it is like a control knob. If you have a low setting, you get one type of FM. If you crank it to a high setting, you get another, and they each have very, very different characteristics. So here's how that control knob works in the real world. When that modulation index is small, you get what's called narrowband FM. Now, it doesn't offer much protection against noise, but it's really efficient, which makes it perfect for things like walkie-talkies. But when you crank that index way up, you get wideband FM, and this is the magic bullet. This is what provides that excellent noise suppression, and it's exactly why we use it for high-fidelity music on the radio.
But of course, that incredible, amazing quality you get from wideband FM, it doesn't come for free. There's always a catch, right? Its biggest disadvantage, and the main reason it took a while to catch on, is that it needs a huge amount of space on the radio spectrum. This is what engineers call the bandwidth price. So how do engineers figure out that exact price? Well, they use a handy guideline known as Carson's rule. Now don't worry, we're not going to do a bunch of math here. Just know that it's a simple way to calculate the space you need to transmit pretty much all of a signal's power, which is the key to getting that rich, high-quality sound.
And what does that price tag look like in practice? Well, for a typical commercial FM station, the bandwidth they need is about 180 kilohertz.
Now, to put that into perspective for you, a normal AM station only needs about 10 kilohertz of space. That 180 kilohertz for an FM station is 18 times more. That is the fundamental trade-off right there. FM gives you vastly superior sound, but it comes at the cost of eating up a much, much wider slice of the airwaves. So even with that really high bandwidth cost, we all know how this story ends. Just turn on your car radio, right?
FM became the undisputed champion, the standard for quality audio. So let's break down the key advantages that really led to this total victory over static.
First, of course, is that superior noise immunity, but there's also this really clever thing called the capture effect. Think of it like this. If you're in a loud room, your brain just naturally tunes into the loudest voice and kind of filters out the rest. And FM radio does the exact same thing. It locks onto the strongest station and completely ignores weaker ones on the same frequency. On top of that, it's more power efficient, and of course that huge bandwidth is exactly what allows for that rich stereo sound we all know and love.
You know, after all the engineering, all the math, and all the history, it really all comes down to this one simple, powerful idea. The next time you're cruising along, listening to perfect, static-free music on the radio, just remember the genius of Edwin Armstrong, who realized the secret to a clear sound wasn't in a wave's